Okay, so let's go to the poems on Inanna. First of all, let me get maybe um, yeah, let's just look at them. Let's go to the first poem, the Hulufu Tree, right? I'm gonna read some of your comments, and then we're gonna go and try and figure out some of those questions that you guys are asking, right? So a really interesting take by Kestenbaum, right, who is saying that what he's noticing here in these texts, and rightly so, is that here the divine is found in the woman, right? This is the point, right? We are so used to seeing God embodied, right, by male metaphors or images that it's surprising to see here a woman who is seen as the representation or the embodiment, right, of the divine feminine. So it's kind of, it's an interesting take, right? So Kestenbaum is really getting the gist of it. A lot of you are seeing the connections with Genesis 3, so we can look at that. Just a few more comments before we get into the actual study. Let's see. So King notices how pleased, right? He was very pleased that for once in a religious text, there is a kind of celebration of sexuality, right? This is indeed very different from what you find in most of the Hebrew Bible, right? Most of the Hebrew Bible is very discreet about sexuality, right? It talks about everything except that. Except, of course, in the text that we're going to study next, right? Ruth, Esther, and so forth. But in general, right, it's not really spoken of. And here you have this kind of celebration of sexuality, of the female body, and so forth. Very new, right? Very different from what we're used to. We're going to look at how the man and the woman and the tree are pictured here, very different from Adam and Eve and the tree, right? We're going to look at that. And he mentions that Adam should take notes from Gilgamesh. So we're going to look at that, right? There's definitely a contrast, right? In our story, we had Eve, struggling with the tree, and Adam was nowhere to be found. In this text, Gilgamesh puts on his armor, he comes and he slays the tree, right? So very different take, right? Morales makes the same point, actually. Yeah, and then we have Alim. Alim is intrigued here with the connections with Cain and Abel, and we should talk about this also. And then I think it's, let's see, Ahmad, right, Ahmad is more interested in the underworld. Why does she have to go to the underworld? What's going on? No text in the Hebrew Bible talking about something like that, right? Except in the New Testament, right? The whole death and resurrection of Jesus has there are connections between the way it's described in the New Testament and this journey by Inanna, absolutely. Finally, what did I write here? Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's get into, I'm going to ask you a few questions that I have actually, that I'm intrigued as I was reading this text, right? I haven't studied these texts anywhere. I'm reading them like you. So I'm intrigued if any of you understood what the tree symbolizes and why. So what is this, right? At one point, the tree becomes inhabited by these evil inhabitants. You have the snake, the bird, and Lilith, right? So the tree is not that great. And yet it's the tree that Inanna has nurtured. So why does the tree turn so bad? And in the end, what does it mean that the tree has to be cut down so violently? And in a way, when it's cut down, it releases Inanna, right? She's now able to have her bed and her throne. We need to ask ourselves what that means. So anybody know what this tree represents? Anybody thought about it? By the way, you can go deep into psychoanalysis here. These are archetypal. I have a feeling these texts, the tree, the sacred marriage, and the underworld, talk about three phases in a woman's life. Like, that's how I would read it. Psychoanalytic. How do I say this word? Analytically, right? So the tree is early, right? Youth, the sacred marriage, mature woman. The underworld is like the wise woman. So I think there's something here to do with the psychology of the woman. So let's hear a little bit on what the tree means. Okay, or what you think it means. All right, we have a few persons. Okay, Granite, go ahead, you're first.
Yeah, obviously this is not like definitely the interpretation, but I guess I was thinking it kind of represents sort of like the a woman like sort of becoming a woman, like a girl, so becoming a woman, and this is like her sexuality is like something that she cultivated, um, and like it's something that she like is very proud of and wants to keep pristine, and it has these sort of like sort of like scary elements to it of like coming into womanhood, like like I mean I wouldn't know from experience, but like I guess like I don't know, like the period and like things like that, which are kind of like scary sort of things that happen with adulthood as a woman, um, and yeah, and I guess then it sort of has to be cut, which I guess taking from like later in the text, like sort of the loss of virginity and stuff, becomes like that really is the way that she can fully enjoy her sexuality, and get past those scary elements and come get the most out of it, I guess, if that makes sense.
That's so Granik, that was exactly what I was thinking. I didn't want to say it, because it's kind of traumatic, right? What happens with Gilgamesh, right? I mean, Gilgamesh is cutting down this tree and it's extremely violent. I mean, he's not the best of lovers, right? Clearly. And even the interpretation I was reading in the book, right, from which I got this text from, she doesn't mention that there's anything sexual going on, but the idea of going into the garden, which is what he does, when you read the biblical text, you have the same expression for the Song of Songs when the man goes into the garden of the woman, and you have the idea here of sexuality. So I kind of like, I align myself with you on that one. I'm eager to hear other interpretations, but that was exactly, I hope you guys took notes, right? That's how I was seeing it. Like she needs in a way to have this first experience, which isn't great. He comes with an axe. Right? But in a way, this is what brings her to womanhood, right? And in a way, it tames her somewhere, right? It kind of subdues her, and all of these negative elements fly away, right? Okay, I like that. All right, let's see if somebody else has another version. Ahmad, go ahead.
I'm gonna say something completely just out there. So for me, the tree seems it represents something completely otherworldly, and as like the proto thing of just existence itself. And then when you have the snake and then the maid and then the bird inhabit it, those sort of represent three levels of existence. So the serpent represents bondage to the earth, whereas the bird is going to represent freedom and spiritual ascent, and whereas the dark maid might represent the integration of the two. And then when Gilgamesh comes and drives them out and breaks the tree down, it kind of humans sort of inherit those three dimensions.
Oh, so you're seeing it more cosmic, right? So this is a cosmic tree with attributes that kind of we all possess, right? So, but wait, so when he breaks down the tree, what does this do? Are you saying all the attributes fly into us now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we inherit those three dimensions within ourselves.
Got it. I like it. I like it. We can do all kinds of things with this text, right? We can do psychoanalytically, like Granik and I, right? We can do something more like, mystical, like the cosmic interpretation. I think you can do that, right? Because these are cosmic images, the tree, the serpent, this, and actually in the Garden of Eden, right? This is a cosmic event. It's not something to do with strictly the woman, right? Great. All right, let's hear who else has their hand up. Stage, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a quick yes or no question. I thought that Lilith was a part of Hebrew text, Talmud, no?
Apparently she was in the folklore broader than the Talmud. I think apparently she's mentioned here, meaning she was probably, the rabbis are aware of her. She might have been a mythical figure which was present in the culture in general.
I don't understand though why they would refer to something that is obviously blasphemous on the part, given the fact that it's a pagan writing, no?
Oh, the rabbis, they're free thinkers. They talk about whatever they want to. There's no censure in rabbinic thought, which is the beauty of it, right? They're very...
I mean, delving into paganism is a completely different thing than delving into philosophy. It's a bit of, like I said, blasphemous on the part of the rabbis, no?
You know, the rabbis, they were even astrologers. They were
Ouch. Okay.
There's
Well,
all
that's
kinds
all
of
I got to
rabbis.
say.
All kinds of rabbis. Very good. Okay, yes, Kestenbaum is mentioning about Lilith. Yeah, she appears in the Talmud and briefly in the Zohar. King, you have something, it looks like you have something to say about our story. Would you like to add?
Oh, did I have my hand raised?
You put something in the chat which looked interesting.
Oh, I was connecting the tree being chopped down to ego death in that uh Inanna's her trajectory and growth into adulthood was on the Seth path through the tree, and in order to get where she needed to be, she had to abandon her ideals from childhood
Yeah,
and completely cut down the tree to move on from it and onto something new.
yeah, very good.
And I think that idea is supported through her having to go to the underworld, having to delve into the darkest, parts of the inner self to go there and to come back would make her stronger. That's what I'm thinking.
Very good. Yes, I think it's right. Something has to die in the young woman, right? She has to go through this kind of rite of passage, according to this story, right? And this rite of passage is not. It's there's some violence, right? Apparently, and it is contact with a man to a certain degree, right? And then she becomes right fully blossom, right? This is not biblical text, right? This is not the biblical. There is no the Bible would probably not agree with this version of initiation, right? But you know, this was the case in those cultures. Actually, in the temples of Inanna, you always had the young girls of the village. In some places, they would take turns in being the sacred prostitute, and they were virgins, right? And the king would come in and be with them, right? So there was really a kind of very violent initiation in those temples to a certain degree, right? So okay, very good. Anything we can get from this text to illuminate our passage in the Bible on Genesis 3? Anybody feel like this text illuminates certain aspects of our text about the tree, the woman? Does this text clarify or bring any new perspective on how we can interpret Genesis 3? Anybody want to try that? I'll try. Right. I'm seeing here the tree as a rite of passage to adulthood, and perhaps, right, some of us said that already when we studied Genesis 3. Maybe the tree of knowledge of good and evil was the passage from innocence to adulthood for humanity, right? So some of us didn't like the tree, some of us liked the tree, right? I remember. And some of us, those of us who liked the tree, right, we were saying this was actually a rite of passage they had to go through. We talked about free will, we talked about, right, the transgression. So maybe, right, there's some element, right, similarly that the tree is a rite of passage, which is difficult into a stage of a maturation, right? Okay, great. All right, let's go to the quest for knowledge, her voyage to see the God of wisdom, Enki. Anybody? So I guess my question is connections with Genesis 3, right? Both women are seeking wisdom, right? The first one is, punished, right? The second one, this is normal. Anything you want to say about this voyage into wisdom? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Okay. I'll give this a shot. So pretty much, I just I found it interesting. Just like when Anna, I don't know how to say her name properly. When she goes and like voyages to go and see the God of wisdom. I don't know. I just found it like, I don't know, odd. Not odd. Maybe the fact that, I don't know, he singles her out and he tells his servant like, prepare all of this for her. And then like they basically get drunk with one another and they just start talking and he basically gives her like the knowledge of like the heavens and the earth. And I just thought like it was just really important because it's like you're giving a woman all of this knowledge and like wisdom and everything. I just found that pretty cool, even if it was like in a drunken state. Like even by the end of like the section, I can say, like he still like bestows it to her, like even though like it was like a crazy journey to get to the end. But like I just found that interesting. And also like there's this part where it talks about how Inanna like basically added on to the man. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like me. It's like M-E. And it like it says that she added on to it, like pretty much saying like she brought this, like she brought allure, she brought like dropping the garment and all this stuff. And I found it interesting. Like I kind of thought of her like kind of like this goddess like caricature. Like I felt like she kind of transcended, like because my group and I, we were talking about that, and we were just like debating if like she was like even like a goddess or like a woman. But like we came to the conclusion that like she basically transcended for the most part, because of like that whole passage of like how she got to it, how like she was welcomed into like his temple. I don't know, I just thought that was interesting.
Yes, you make very interesting points. The first one is the connection between the woman and wisdom, right? Which we have throughout the ancient world, right? Including in the Bible, right? This idea that the woman is actually the one who is wise, right? That she is the one we go to when we need wisdom. You have this in Egyptian culture, you have this here, you have this in biblical culture, right? When Solomon writes, for example, the book of Proverbs, and he talks about Lady Wisdom, right? This wisdom who was with God at the beginning of time, and he personifies this wisdom as a woman, right? So you have, and then you have, of course, the Song of Songs, which is also supposed to be a text on wisdom, and the main character again is a woman, right? So absolutely, right? In the ancient world, right, the wisdom was always embodied by a woman. Women were seen to have some kind of wisdom. So contrast with the biblical text where her desire for wisdom, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think there is a contrast, or do you think the biblical text is also saying the woman has a connection to wisdom? Goldstein, go ahead.
This is a pretty superficial detail, and I'm not sure if it might help clarify your question or answer, but I did notice that it said that she leaned against the tree, and that's kind of when everything started. So it immediately made me think of in the Genesis story when Eve told the serpent that she can't touch the tree.
Yes, we have, right? She's leaning on the tree, and this is her, at that moment, she's in full bloom, right? As a woman, sexually and so forth. And she's about to gain this wisdom and become in full bloom also intellectually, right? Whereas in Genesis, she cannot touch the tree, right? And almost like she doesn't get to that point, right? There's something almost, I don't want to criticize our text in Genesis since I'm supposed to teach them, but there certainly the text is making a connection between the woman and wisdom, right? And if we see the text in a positive light, right, as a moment of initiation for the couple, then we do see the woman as ushering in this new era, right? This era into adulthood, this era of wisdom. Granik, do you want to try? Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if this is exactly on point, but I guess I did notice that the type of knowledge is slightly different in the two texts. So in the biblical text, obviously, it's like the knowledge of good and evil. And that's sort of vague and unclear what it's exactly talking about. And everyone kind of has different theories about what it's talking about. But in this text, it's kind of more explicit, like what the knowledge is. And it says like I think it's like the laws of heaven and earth. And that sounds like on the surface, it sounds like more like laws of nature or something like that. But I guess the list is kind of, different categories of knowledge. So yeah, I don't know.
That is interesting, right? In the text, it's a moral, right? The issue is moral. Here, it's more cultural civilization, right? It's as though the woman is bringing civilization. And this is actually a very, it's an idea you find in the Talmud also, right? That the woman is the one who brings, in many of these texts. Also, if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I would really suggest you read, you actually have an allusion there to the flood, right? The Epic of Gilgamesh is around the same time. It's the story of Gilgamesh, right, whom we met briefly, right? So you have this idea that also in the Epic of Gilgamesh, that the woman brings civilization. Without the woman, life would be barbaric, right? And maybe, right, I don't know if we have this in the biblical text. I'm trying to think of the equivalent of the woman bringing civilization, and I don't see it. You have it in the Talmud, though, right? So this is perhaps one of the ways we can interpret this, right? So thank you. Let's see. Alim, go ahead.
I kind of saw the me as kind of similar to good and evil because, like, although Granick said, like, it is laws, like, some of the things that they were, like, mentioning when, like, they were, like, describing what the me is, they were, like, some of them were clearly good, like godship, hero, and those types of things, but other things were, like, clearly bad, like treachery and, like, plundering of cities. And we kind of saw, like, in my group, we kind of saw the duality between in this me and in the knowledge of, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And one part specifically that stands out that, like, for me confirms that the me is talking about, like, duality of knowledge is the part where it's like the loosening of the hair and the binding of the hair. So, like, those are, like, completely opposites.
Good.
So just to bring that perspective in.
Nice, yes. So then it would be kind of a union of opposites, and maybe we are talking about good and evil. Yeah, I think that works. Interesting. Very good. Let's see who else. Ahmad, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention something that's slightly contradictory to what you're saying, in that it's also because of Gilgamesh that Inanna gets all her wisdom.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Yes. Yeah, forgot to say. Well, that's excellent. Thank you. Right, because what we're going to see when we do the Hebrew goddesses, right, is that there is a mutual awakening happening between the man and the woman. And you have this here. I'm going to, of course, elaborate on this next time. But yes, Gilgamesh awakens Inanna to her womanhood, and Inanna awakens Gilgamesh to his royalty, right? I hope you're seeing the connections with Teshuka and Mashal, right? Gilgamesh awakens the woman to her sexuality, right, which could be Teshuka. Remember Teshuka, right? Desire, and Mashal, the rule. And she gives him the royalty, right, which is the rule. So there, I'm seeing connections there between this text and 3:16. Are you following me on that? Do you remember what is Teshuka and Mashal? Put your hand. Okay, great. So both times, also when she's with Dumutsi, right, he awakens her. You know, he gives her finally her bed and her throne, right? Or actually, that's Gilgamesh who gave her that, right? But in a way, Dumutsi kind of waters her, makes her fertile, and she gives him the royalty again. So there's a mutual influence, which we'll talk about. Thank you, Ahmad. That was a very important point. That Gilgamesh, even though it's violent, he's ruthless, and in fact, we see how ruthless he is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He's kind of like, you know, one of those. You know, those studs in high school, you know, who sleep with everybody and they have no emotions. You know what I'm talking about? No? Okay, he's kind of like that. He's a little bit ruthless. He's a little bit insensitive. We see that, right, in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And so he kind of misuses the power that she gives him. And Dumutsi, we'll see, he has his own issues. But I love it. And you can write this down. I'm going to talk about this more. This notion of each one of them awakening the other. We see this also in the Hebrew Bible, which I'll talk about in detail next time. Excellent. Goldstein, I thought you had your hand up just a second ago.
I did. I was going to answer the question of how the woman creating civilization relates to this with the Teshuka and Mashal thing, but then you said it.
Please, what? I did? Well, say what you were going to say. I'm curious.
Along the similar lines of what you just said, that we had learned in Genesis 3 that it was the woman that actually brought civilization to the world, because when Adam kind of dropped his cosmic responsibility, the woman needed to have a way to get it back to him, and that's what ended up happening, that the punishment ended up being redemptive, and that did form the civilization. So that is a very strong parallel between Genesis and Inanna.
Yes, excellent. And also something I didn't mention in class, but I mentioned in the article, right? Her love towards him awakens him to his royalty, right? This is something we didn't talk about. Please read the article, because I really make the emphasis that there is an awakening occurring when she loves him. It awakens something in him, which in turn awakens something in her, right? There's a mutual awakening in Genesis 3:16 that I'm seeing here also. Very nice. Ram, go ahead.
So I was just wondering, Gilgamesh, wasn't that Inanna's brother?
Gilgamesh, she calls him her brother, but he's actually a cousin.
Okay, I'm just confused about that, that's all.
No, it's fine. Yeah, her brother is Utu. That's her real brother.
That I know as well.
Yes, they will
Okay.
help you to know now already that when you call someone your brother, it can also mean your beloved, right? Just like we will see in the Song of Songs, right? Excellent, good question. Okay, let's go now to the marriage between Inanna and Dumutsi. Connections here with Cain and Abel. Powerful connections. You have the shepherd and the farmer, same, right? Same conflict. Any comments on, what happens there, and especially what happens between her and Dumutsi? What are they? What is the significance of this marriage? What is being really? What is happening there? Again, the connection between the shepherd and the farmer. What are the connections in this text and our text on Cain and Abel? Anyone want to try? Ram, you have your hand up still, or just from before? Ram left the room. Pierre-Antoine?
Okay, I think this, like, we spoke about how, like, I'm making a connection to, like, Genesis, I think 2 or 3 with, like, this section, but, like, we were speaking about how, like, before the redemptive curse, that's kind of redundant, but before the redemption of Adam and Eve, pretty much, like, Eve, like we said, like, how she basically had, like, no love for, like, Adam. Like, there was not this, like, connection that they had between each other. It wasn't until, like, the curse or the redemptive aspect of what God punished them with, that's when, like, the love started. And, like, when talking about Inanna, that's not how you say it, but, like, well, I'm really bad at names. I'm gonna say, like, the courtship between the two in, like, this specific poetry, like, it's funny how, like, she basically rejects him at first, and I just found that funny, like, because I didn't, like, necessarily think about it, but, like, thinking about, like, how Genesis, like, Eve didn't really care for Adam is kind of like how she rejects him at first. So
Yes, very good. Same, right? The best one, the tough one, right? The tough guy, the stud is Cain, right? And here the farmer, right? So again, you have this view in the ancient world, right? Two types of men, right? You have the established, well-to-do, powerful, material man, and then you have the spiritual man, right? The shepherd, the man who is kind of doesn't have that much money, but has, a certain degree of soulfulness, right? And so in the Hebrew Bible, exile or nomadism, right, is you don't know this, but of all the tribes of Israel, there was only one that could not inherit land. Anybody know which one that was? And what was their function? 12 tribes. All of them got land except one. Good. Why? Why didn't they have land? Who were they?
Because they were in the priesthood, so that was their reward.
Exactly. So in the Hebrew Bible, nomadism, right, is associated with priestly function, spirituality. These are people who are not attached to the earth. Their roots are elsewhere. Their concerns are elsewhere. So you have same distinction here, right? You have this farmer and then this shepherd, and eventually she turns to the shepherd, right, who turns out to be a very good lover, at least initially. Notice, by the way, how does the relationship, first of all, a beautiful description, right? And this is a very beautiful poetic description of lovemaking, right? That you will have only the same thing in the Song of Songs. You get that good, right? But notice at the end, what happens? Do they end up living happily ever after? What happens at the end of the story of their wedding? Go there. Page. Yeah, go to page 48. How does it end? With a nice baby? They live happily ever after and have 10 children? What happens? Page 48, guys. Somebody tell me. How does it end on page 48? You don't remember? That's the best part of the story. Okay, Ram, go ahead.
Did she change his hand into a snake or something?
Later, that's later. I'm talking 48. Right after the wedding.
Okay,
You're way too far. You're too far. Who else can see right after the wedding? Page 48. Doesn't have pages, what I give you? Oh, that's why. Okay. Oh, right before the descent. Right before the descent of an Inanna. You have the last part. I'll read it to you since you can't find it. This is what he tells her after all the lovemaking. Now my sweet love is sated. Now he says, set me free, my sister, set me free. You will be a little daughter to my father. Oh my God. Come, my beloved sister, I would go to the palace. Set me free. This should remind you of something going on in the biblical texts. Similar. Anybody? We're going ahead of ourselves. Alim.
Would it be similar to Abraham calling Sarah his sister?
So yeah, definitely the notion of sister and brother is a term of endearment, right, in that culture. So yes, that's true. But where else in the Hebrew Bible do you have a love story that ends with the man leaving and the woman letting him? Anybody know? We'll come back to it. Pierre-Antoine, you want to try?
Wait, before I answer, because I thought of something, but like, am I allowed is it like within the Old Testament context, or are we talking about?
Yeah, Old Testament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about leaving? I mean, I could think of it like, ooh, maybe like, wow, okay. I would say Adam and Eve, but like, no.
No.
I'll think about
it. All right, Goldstein, you want to try?
It's not really the woman leaving, but it made me think of when Sarah told Abraham to take her maidservant because she couldn't have kids, and then later again with, I forgot which one, but another one of them did that as well, another one of the forefathers. So it made me think of that.
It's not the woman leaving, it's the man that's leaving, right? He tells her, set me free. So the man is, yes, Vargas, tell us.
I think it's when the man is leaving and the woman is letting him leave, but still holds on to him and is still loyal to him.
Yes, if you look at the Song of Songs, the last verse, you have almost exactly the same thing. The man telling her, or she sets him free. She says, go, my beloved, be free, right? Very similar ending. There are enormous connections between the Song of Songs and this text, actually, which is why we're going to spend some time on that. Another really important connection in the Song of Songs and this marriage is this description of the man saying, my arm is under your neck and my other arm is around your waist. Anybody remember this from the Song of Songs? She says the same thing. Your arm is under my neck and around my waist. So same position, which was classic position, actually, describing this type of sacred marriage in the ancient Near Eastern literature, right? So Song of Songs is drawing from this imagery, clearly familiar with this text, possibly, right? Goldstein, you want to add?
Oh, no, I just didn't take my hand down. But do we know when this text was written?
So, yes, this was certainly earlier than Song of Songs. This is in BC, from what I was going to tell you today. In my notes that I had prepared, this is around, gosh, where are my notes? The goddess says around 4000 BC is where the goddess emerges, and Song of Songs is 1000 BC. So these texts are a little earlier. So it could, and remember Solomon, who is said to have authored the Song of Songs, he was a philosopher, right? He knew first of all, he was married to everybody, right? He knew these nations through marriage, and he certainly knew these texts, right? So it's possible that Solomon might have borrowed some motives in order to make a point, and we'll talk about that. Pierre-Antoine?
Yeah, this might be like a dumb question, but I I don't understand, like, okay, why would they get married if like he had to leave? Like, why not leave them alone? Like, why do this whole thing for to get with him finally, and then for him just to leave? Like, was it just for him to like consummate a marriage and then like go? I don't get it.
Yeah, I'll explain. So again, this is not biblical thought, right? But in this context, the idea was that the goddess revitalizes the king, right? So he has sex with her and he leaves empowered to rule, right? So the woman, in a way, she empowers the man through sexuality, right? And then he can go off and perform his real duties, right? So there was the sacred ritual we're going to talk about, which occurred every year. You had the king go into the temple of Inanna and sleep with the god, the prostitute there, and then it would be like he would be given back his throne. The whole country would rejoice. So there's the idea here, which we'll talk about next time, of the woman, in a way, through the sexuality, she empowers the man in a way to become the king or to rule and so forth. Again, the same idea of Teshuka and Mashal, right? I'm seeing it at the same
giving the reign. Okay.
Yeah, so through his communion with the woman, he becomes empowered in a way to rule in that way. So, and we're going to talk about in the Hebrew Bible how the woman does this repeatedly. Has this effect on the man, right? So I'm going to draw back to that. Please, no, King, how can you bring this into our beautiful discussion? You're ruining the poetry. Okay, let's finish with the underworld briefly, because this I haven't seen the equivalent except in the New Testament. With Jesus, obviously, right? But I haven't seen this idea of going to the underworld and emerging, right? Anybody want to talk about why she had to do this? Why did she decide to do this? And how does she come out, right? I'm curious to hear you on this. And why is she so mad at Dumutsi? I was so sad what happened with Dumutsi, right? She's so pissed at him, and she sends him, what's going on? Like, I'm in psychoanalytically, like, I'm curious to know if we see this as the ages of women, right? You have the early woman with the tree, the mature, older, like, whatever, erotic woman with the marriage, and now we have the kind of older, wise woman with this underworld thing. What is happening? I'm so curious to hear you guys on this. I was so perplexed by this passage. Why she has to go, why she's so mad at Dumutsi, why he has to go now. What does this tell us? What is the wisdom? Is there any lesson we can learn? Okay, I think one of you was already talking about that. Ahmad, do you want to introduce this? You're talking about connecting Inanna and Enki. I thought that was interesting. Can you tell us more?
I saw how in the beginning, Enki tried to journey into the underworld himself, but failed. And then...
Oh, great. I didn't know that. Did he? Where?
Right in the first page.
I remember this. I read this too fast. Let's go there. This is in the first page. Oh, yeah. Hey, wait. First page? In the Hulufu Tree?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Let's see. Enki set sail, blah, 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 blah. Oh. Oh, he got devoured. Page 4, right? Interesting. I hadn't seen that. Okay, so he failed, did he? Oh, yeah. He was not able to enter. Interesting. Okay, go on.
And, after he bestows all of Inanna's titles and divine attributes, and then she sets to journey into the underworld herself. In a way, she's like Enki's heir and tries to redeem him. So he passes the torch on to her.
Yeah, she becomes the god of wisdom, or the goddess of wisdom. And in a way, there can be no wisdom unless there is perhaps no true wisdom, unless there is perhaps this trip to the underworld. What does it mean that true wisdom comes from crossing into that experience? What does it do to you to enter? What does it mean to, what do they mean when they say enter the underworld and come back out, like psychologically or existentially? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
This might be like a full and face value ass look on it, but like when you go through the underworld or whatever, it's like you're basically going through like the trenches and like actually like going through it all to like you see everything. And like obviously if you're the goddess or god of wisdom, you have to know everything, and like without experience you're not going to know everything, even as like a god. Like in certain texts, like different mythologies also explain stuff like how gods have to go to the underworld and like get knowledge. So like it's kind of something like that. And I feel like that was necessary to be a part of her journey to like complete like the full transcendence of being like a goddess.
Okay, excellent. And what does it teach us human beings about going through a similar experience? Do you have anything to add to that? Like
that like as mortals, as humans, like we're supposed to go through these things in life, like that's natural, but like you're supposed to come out of it. Like at the end of the day you're going to get out of it.
Okay, right. So yeah, that was how I saw it also. I think Goldstein wants to add a few things. Go ahead, Goldstein. And then Ahmed.
No, just what I wrote in the chat.
You want to elaborate on that?
It was just coming to kind of teach us as humans that when you go through hard times, you come out on the other side a better person, and you would not have been able to be that better person without going through it. So it's not only that it's here to teach us lessons and here to make us more relatable, but it's actually that you cannot be that good of a person if you didn't go through this adversity and hard times.
Right. There's a kind of wisdom you cannot understand intellectually, right? You have to go through pain, right? You have to go through the crucible of suffering, and then you emerge with real wisdom. Perhaps that's what's going on. It's like, to respond to Ahmed, Enki had intellectual wisdom, and she now has kind of experiential wisdom, perhaps, right? Ahmed, do you want to add?
I also saw it as a way of the hero Inanna gaining learning more about herself. So the underworld represents you going into your own unconscious.
Yes.
And when she lost each of the 7 me's individually, could represent you peeling a layer of what you thought you were. So you get to the core of your own self. And
I like that. I like that. She's taking off the garments, right, of like who she thought she was, and all the false conceptions about how she should be, how she should live, who she should be. And she gets to the core of herself. So in a way, this journey is helping her really know who she truly is. It's the shedding of the false selves, right? I like that. Very nice. You guys are so good. It's so nice. See why I had to do this excursus? Now, here's my question though. She comes out, and Dumutsi, why is she so mad at him? And what does it tell us about gender relations? I'm just curious if there's any lesson here about gender relations or about marriage, right? That she comes out, and notice, right? She's looking for someone to replace her. Everyone is receiving her in dust and ashes, right? Everyone is in the dust, bowing, right? If I noticed this also recently, right? All her servant, her sons, they are in the dust, bowing before her with, joy. But when she gets to Dumutsi, how is he? Anybody remember? Where is he sitting? Is he in the dust? Where is he?
Throne?
Yeah, he's on his throne. So he's up, right? Everybody else was down, and he's up. Okay, so here's my question, what's so wrong about that? He was supposed to be the king, right? He's supposed to be up on the throne. Why is she so pissed at him? I have to know. Somebody has to tell me. Let's see. Alim, go ahead. Let's see if you can enlighten me.
So it's kind of like, the way I interpreted it was like, she was the one who kind of gave him that power to become king, as shown before. And then when she's in a time of need, he isn't bowing down to her like how her servants are, but he's like just sitting up there, and he doesn't like offer himself for her, so she's angry at that.
Yes, he doesn't, right? He's kind of indifferent, like he has forgotten the source of his power, perhaps, and that's why she's like, I made you. How dare you? So maybe, yes, I like that. That could work. Ram, you want to try?
Well, I think she thought that that because he didn't warn her, and he was just sitting there on his throne, and he couldn't be bothered about her. Typical female, you know. She got like really angry because he just didn't. He was too busy with himself to, you know, to even miss that she was gone.
Okay, yeah. So we do have, right, the explanation is clear in the story, but I'm wondering about the interpretation. Like, how can we now, what can we learn from this story with regards to gender relations? That's what I'm curious about. Like, we learned already that with Gilgamesh that the man can initiate or awaken the woman. We saw between Inanna and Dumutsi that she can awaken his royalty. And so I'm always drawing some lesson, right, with regards to gender relations. But here I'm a little stuck. So I'm waiting for you. Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
There's this I think philosopher that you spoke about where I think she said that like men and women, like I'm generalizing, but men and women are supposed to be like equal, like balanced and whatever. I forgot who that was.
Uruguay.
Yes, Uruguay. And in a sense, like because he forgot about like what he did, like what she did for him, it's kind of like representing what's happening like in the world, like in many different societies.
Yeah.
Because it's like men forget like they were born from a woman, and obviously if their mother wasn't alive, they're not going to be alive. But they like to use like the role of woman to like demean women and like oppress them. But they forget that their mother was the one who nurtured them, cared for them, and everything. And because they like like I just blanked. Sorry, but like basically like because he forgot where like she got him to, it was like she wanted to take him down entirely because there's no more balance. There's like, you forget about me, so you deserve to be punished in a sense. That's what I think.
You know what's interesting is that shortly after this story was written, so this was a Sumer, right? You have the Babylonians who take over, and the goddess changes from Inanna to Ishtar. We're going to talk about that. Same goddess, right? But and the religion changes from a goddess oriented to God oriented, and the main god now is going to be Marduk, right? And so the religion of the goddess is completely annihilated by the Babylonians who come after the Sumerians, right? And then you have the coming of the patriarchy and the male-centered religions and political system and so forth. And you have this forgetfulness, this forgetfulness, or this kind of, you know, you forget about the woman and her contribution, right? So maybe Pierre-Antoine, this is what's happening here. This is a story about how we shift from a kind of mutual awakening, right, to then it becoming more of a male-dominated society, forgetting that this power comes from the woman ultimately, and then she strikes him down, right? This is contemporary feminism, right? She strikes him down and sends him in the underworld. Any feminist text you read today is that. Blah. Okay, good. I like that, Pierre-Antoine. That was good. That's really helpful, actually. I really like it. Goldstein, you want to add?
Yeah, to answer your question in a little differently than we just did, but I kind of see a parallel between all relations, not just gender relations, in the sense that if we're going with the theories we said before, that the underworld was kind of a parallel to bettering yourself and shedding the 7 layers and coming out differently. She comes back now and she sees Dumutsi, and it says he did not move and he didn't change. He's still exactly the same. He didn't better himself. And she could be looking at him and saying, why are you still in the exact same place? How are you there? And that makes her angry. I just went through this whole processing and I bettered myself and I'm this whole different, I shed all my layers, I brought new things, and you're still exactly the same.
And we cannot coexist, right? So in a way, she facilitates his own transformation, right? She makes him go through a change, right? If the woman is changing, the man has to change, right? For them to continue to be together, right? So in a way, she kind of precipitates his own transformative journey, and he resists, right? It's painful, but in the end, he does so, and then you have this. Thank you, Pierre Antoine, for that balance. 6 months, 6 months, right? He comes up, comes down, comes up, comes down, and you have now this kind of equalization, right? Interesting. Anybody else want to add? I see Ahmed, go ahead.
I just wanted to make an interesting historical parallel to what you said about the Babylonians taking over the Sumerians, and that those who raided and took over Sumer were actually Semites who were goat and sheep herders. And then interestingly enough, Inanna chooses a shepherd as her lover who takes the throne.
So maybe there is already an illusion that she's married to a Semite who then takes over, like the Babylonians took over. Yeah, I like that.
That's what transitions the worship of goddesses to gods.
Exactly. It moves from the goddess who was high, and now he is high and she is very nice historical. You guys, we should really be on a talk show or something. I really feel like we're really hitting on some interesting truths. Okay, so great. I mean, I'm so glad we did this little parentheses, right? I think it was useful because we're going to draw from these texts. I'm going to allude to these texts. Obviously, the biblical text is going to go in a very different direction, but the biblical text is going to have similar. There will be some connections, right? Which I think are really important. The authors of the biblical text will intentionally be connecting what they're doing with these with this goddess religion, right? And we'll have to find out why, what's going on. The infiltration of the goddess religion in the Hebrew Bible is a very interesting topic, right? So next time I will actually do the lecture that I wanted to do, introducing the Hebrew goddesses, right? So, but maybe, yeah, I think we're out of time. But just one more line, one more sentence, right? What we're going to see, right, in the three texts, the Song of Songs, Ruth, and Esther, is going to be also, there's going to be similarities, right, between these texts, and I think intentional similarities, right? And we'll see how that works. Great, and see how we can, again, recover, right, the divine feminine in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, guys, next time, no homework. I know I'm like, we're just going day by day. Forget the syllabus, okay? We're just gonna go step by step. You're on vacation. No, actually, no, you have to, you have to read the whole book of Ruth and do the similar questions, and like we've been doing. I want you to have a sense of, or is it the whole book of Ruth? No, not yet. Nothing for next time. I'm so sorry. Nothing for next time. Okay, just come as you are. I'm going to lecture on, I'm going to just introduce the Hebrew goddesses, and next time you will be reading the book of Ruth. See a couple questions. Said, go ahead.
Yes. When is the test due?
Oh, thank you. The test is this weekend, right? Saturday night, midnight. You need to have your test in the drive. And that's it, I think. Yeah.
When will it be graded?
So good to know, right? I'll grade it Sunday morning, so you can do it as long as you want until I wake up in the Sunday morning.
Okay.
So you have
okay, and okay, it'll be graded then. But when will we get the results? That's what I'm saying.
Normally on Sunday.
Oh, okay, fine.
I'll post the results on the in the grade book, which is in the drive. Aline?
But just to be clear, all we have to do is the test this weekend, and then we don't have to read anything.
Yes, exactly, right? I'm giving you full time to do your test, and you don't have to read anything because I'm just going to do an introduction next time. Yes. Good. All right, I'll stop the reading.